Lesson 4.3, Equivalent Ratios and Multiplication Tables. In today's lesson, we're going to discuss how we can use a multiplication table to find equivalent ratios. Let's go ahead and get started. The first way I can find equivalent ratios is by using a multiplication table. And so if I bring one up, in this particular problem, we can see that the original ratio is 2 to 5. So for 2 pints of orange juice, there's going to be 5 pints of pineapple juice. And so what you're going to do is when you have a table, you're going to highlight or circle the numbers that are given in the original ratio. So in this case, I'm talking about 2 for orange juice, so I'm going to highlight the whole entire 2 column. And since I'm talking about 5 for pineapple juice, I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of the 5s. And you can see that our first ratio that was given, the original, is right here, 2 to 5. Which means if I keep going, my next one would be 4 to 10. Then I would have 6 to 15, and then 8 to 20. Another way that we can go ahead and figure out equivalent ratios is the same way we would do it for fractions. So for example, I'm going to multiply by a form of 1. So I can take any number I can think of other than 1. So 6 times 2, and whatever I do to the top, I have to do to the bottom. And so this would become 12/16. I could then again do it again, but this time I'm going to go by 3. And that would get me 18/24. So again, you can use any number that you would like as long as you're using the same number for the top or the bottom. The other way that we can write an equivalent ratio is by dividing. And this would happen when we see a number or two numbers that have a common factor we can pull out. So in this case, when I have 6 to 8, I see that they're both even numbers. And so I can divide each number by 2. And so that would give me another equivalent ratio, which would be 3 to 4. Sometimes we have a ratio where we're able to do both. So for example, I could go ahead and divide each of these numbers. I could pull out the factor of 3, and that would give me 2/3. Or I can go ahead and multiply these by another number. So instead of dividing by 3 like I did to get this one, maybe I'm now going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply it by 3, which would get me this. What you're going to do now is go ahead and open up your math notebook, and we're going to copy down the following notes, how to write equivalent ratios. And the first one is we can use a multiplication chart. So I'm not going to have you copy a multiplication chart down, but we're just going to list it as a possible way to do that. Once you have that copied down, we're going to go ahead and write number 2, which would be multiply. And I have the ratio 4 to 11 written down here. And so again, like I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to multiply the top and the bottom number by the same number. So now I would have 8 to 22. Maybe now I'm going to go ahead and try 3. I would have 12 to 33. And then I also could do 4. And that would give me 16 to 44. And so all of these are equivalent ratios. Once you have this copied down, continue to hit play. And then the last example would be divide by a common factor. So not all ratios were able to do this, but if we see that they can have a common factor pulled out, then this would be another strategy. And so in this case, I have 2 to 6, and I know that they're both even numbers, and I definitely can divide 6 by 2, so I'm going to use that number. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and then 6 divided by 2 is 3. And so an equivalent ratio to 2 to 6 would be 1 to 3. Once you have this copied down, continue to hit play. All right, finally, you're going to copy down our test prep question. I should see the original ratio set up and then how you got in an equivalent ratio and select your answer. Once you've completed that, continue to hit play. Okay, our last step is to copy down our essential question. How can you use a multiplication table to find equivalent ratios? We're going to add to that because we also discussed how we can multiply and we also discussed how we could divide. So I should see all three of these strategies mentioned in your response. Once you've completed that, the video is done, and I look forward to discussing this with you in class.